A big reveal or a shocking plot twist can elevate a movie far beyond mere entertainment to an unforgettable work of artistic genius. However, if a filmmaker knows they've got a killer revelation up their sleeve, they often can't resist the urge to hint at it throughout the movie. And so we have these 10 films, all of which effectively spoiled their own story, twist and all, long before audiences actually got anywhere near close to the finish line, and you never even noticed it. Admittedly, you would have to be paying close attention to figure these clues out on a first viewing, but none of the films made it totally impossible for audiences, leaving everything they needed to know hidden in plain sight. I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 times movies spoiled their own story. Number 10. The opening shot explains the twist. Us. Jordan Peele's Us once again sees the filmmaker relishing toying with his audience, hiding literally dozens of Easter eggs and narrative clues throughout the film. The best of all actually appears in the very first shot though, when a commercial for Hands Across America is playing on a TV and a VHS copy of the 1984 cult horror movie Chud is visible on the left-hand side. In that film, Chud stands for Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers, and the plot revolves around New York City's homeless population living underground in the city's sewers, where they're turned into the titular monsters by radioactive toxic waste. While on its own, the Chud VHS might not seem like an overt hint at the narrative of Peele's film, when you combine it with the ambiguous opening title text, it spells out the central plot pretty clear. In the end, it turns out that the movie's terrifying murderous doppelgangers, known as the Tethered, are actually government-created clones which have been abandoned to live, even dwell, underground since the government experiment failed. The Tethered may not be cannibals, but their plan does involve replacing their above-ground originals, so it's not a million miles away either. Basically, it all comes back to Chud. Number 9. Bill Nye literally says the plot twist aloud. Hot Fuzz. Edgar Wright's hilarious buddy cop movie Hot Fuzz climaxes with the reveal that the murders taking place in the town of Sanford have actually been the doing of the Neighborhood Watch Alliance, aka the NWA, led by Inspector Frank Butterman. Since Butterman's wife committed suicide when Sanford failed to win the Village of the Year contest, Butterman and the NWA have been offing anyone who threatened to ruin their future chances, no matter how petty the infraction may have been. The director is no stranger to including absurdly specific foreshadowing in his films, but Hot Fuzz takes the cake by quite literally verbalizing the big rug pull aloud in the opening scene. At the start of the movie, the Met Chief Inspector explains that Nicholas Angel is being sent to Sanford because his impeccable policing is making everyone else in London look bad. Angel says, "With respect, sir, you can't just make people disappear," to which the inspector knowingly replies, "Yes, I can. I'm the Chief Inspector." Given that the villain of the film is literally the inspector who disappears people because of his powerful position, it's all laid out for the audience in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Number 8. Kay's orphanage memory confirms he isn't the chosen one. Blade Runner 2049. Blade Runner 2049 ingeniously subverts the expected chosen one trope by leading the audience to believe that replicant Kay is the child of Deckard and his replicant lover Rachel. That's because it's revealed later in the movie that Kay isn't anyone special at all, with Deckard and Rachel's child actually being Dr. Anna Stelline, a minor character who briefly appeared earlier in the film. But attentive viewers actually could have figured this out for themselves, as Kay's earlier memory of his youth in an orphanage depicts him as having a healthy head of hair. That is fine, except that every other boy we see in the orphanage, both past and present, has a shaved head, and only the girls have anything more than a buzz cut. This is because, of course, this memory actually doesn't belong to Kay, but was implanted by Dr. Stelline, having actually been based on her own youth. Number 7. Ransom's guilt is spelled out several times, Knives Out. The big reveal in Rian Johnson's deliciously twisty whodunit is that Harlan Thrombey's death was set into motion by none other than his scheming grandson Ransom. This isn't explicitly revealed to the audience until the end of the film, at which point a dead-to-rights Ransom attempts to stab Harlan's heroic nurse Marta to death with a knife, only to hilariously discover that it was actually a retractable prop knife instead. Ransom's big mistake is actually teed up at the end of the movie's first act though, just as we learned that Harlan slit his own throat after believing he had been accidentally poisoned by Marta. Before he dies, Harlan tells Marta that Ransom is, quote, playing life like a game without consequence, until you can't tell the difference between a stage prop and a real knife. End quote. Then there's the fact that housekeeper Fran literally tells Marta Hugh did this in her dying breath halfway through the movie, though because only the hired help refer to Ransom by his first name Hugh, both Marta and the audience assume she's saying, "You did this." And finally, near the start of the movie, the dogs respond with hostility to Ransom, unlike everyone else, which might be the most obvious spoiler of all. Number 6. The cult's plan is constantly foreshadowed. Hereditary. Ari Aster's Hereditary is a devastating and ingenious exercise in leaving the viewer mentally drained, and beyond the traumatic turmoil of its plot, Aster also ensured to sprinkle a ton of clues for eagle-eyed viewers to catch on repeat viewings. For starters, the Coven eventually revealed to be using poor Peter as a vessel for the demon Paimon are shown to be subtly manipulating the family throughout the film. Members of the Coven seen later in the movie are present at the opening funeral of Annie's mother, while Annie's mother herself is buried with a necklace bearing the distinctive seal of Paimon himself, and several ritualistic incantations are scrawled around the family home, such as Satany above Charlie's bed. Elsewhere, Coven members can be seen nakedly standing outside the house at night if you crank the contrast of your TV up. Aye, I bet you missed that one. My personal favourite detail though is that you can even see Annie's new friend from the support group, Joan, buying a new chalkboard with which to trick Annie, given that she later pretends that the chalkboard belonged to her dead son. Number 5. Miranda Tate's scar and Alfred's declaration, The Dark Knight Rises. The two big reveals in The Dark Knight Rises are the true identity of Bruce Wayne's love interest Miranda Tate and the real fate of Bruce himself, both of which are quite blatantly signposted earlier on. Firstly, Miranda Tate of course turns out to be Ra's al Ghul's daughter Talia, a twist that's foreshadowed twofold. For starters, Christopher Nolan lingers on a distinctive scar on Talia's back, similar to the League of Shadows brand seen in Batman Begins, and she also mentions to Bruce at a party that she wants to, quote, bring balance to the world, which is basically the League's own motto. As for the final fake-out with the presumed dead Bruce turning up alive in Florence, well, before resigning from his post as Bruce's butler, Alfred passionately tells Bruce, quote, I've sewn you up, I've set your bones, but I won't bury you, end quote. And so, when Alfred is sobbing over what appears to be Bruce's grave in the film's closing montage, attentive viewers should be aware that Alfred didn't in fact bury Bruce. Moments later we get the payoff to this, with Alfred giving a very much alive Bruce a knowing nod in Florence, and that's all she wrote. Number 4. The opening song's lyrics spell out the ending, La La Land. La La Land wasn't quite the movie that many expected it to be, concluding in unexpectedly bittersweet fashion. If the bulk of the movie is a do-they-don't-they plot between budding actress Mia and jazz pianist Sebastian, it ultimately turns out that their aspirations lead them in different directions. Though they do share a fondness for one another, they ultimately don't end up together, and no, I'm not crying, you're crying. It's a sad conclusion, but it's actually spelled out in the film's stunning opening musical number, Another Day of Sun, which includes these lyrics, quote, "'Cause maybe in that sleepy town he'll sit one day, the lights are down, he'll see my face and think of how he used to know me," end quote. I mean, Christ, that's like when you first properly hear the lyrics of Hey Ya or something, it's just brutal. Now these lyrics effectively describe La La Land's final scene, where Mia and her husband walk into a jazz bar owned by Sebastian, where he's playing the piano. Mia and Sebastian then lock eyes and imagine a potential future they could have shared once upon a time, before continuing along on their separate paths. Number 3. All the hidden clues searching. Searching follows a desperate father, David Kim, as he frantically attempts to track down his missing daughter, Margot, by any technological means necessary. In the end, it turns out that Margot was catfished by Robert, the son of Detective Vic. After Robert attempted to come clean to Margot, he accidentally pushed her off a cliff, causing her to become trapped at the bottom of a ravine. Robert's mother then used her detective know-how to help cover up Robert's involvement, even killing an ex-con and framing him for Margot's supposed murder. It's a wonderful, twisty narrative, and co-writer-director Anish Chaganty ensured to include a number of sneaky hints towards the big reveal throughout the film. In the movie's opening montage of Margot growing up, she and her father are stood next to a high school sign which reads, "The Home of the Catfish," while later a news headline slyly reads, "Trapped hiker survives 9 days in the Sierras," nodding towards Margot's improbable, but not impossible, survival in the ravine. Elsewhere, Robert is listed in the Kim family Rolodex as having a crush on Margot, but because he's listed under Robbie Abbott and Detective Vic uses her maiden name of Vic, David is unable to make any sort of connection between the two. And finally, when Kim looks up Detective Vic on Facebook, her header contains a telling Agatha Christie quote, "A mother's love for her child is like nothing else in the world," end quote. Number 2. The guitar has a gold tooth, like Hector, Coco. Coco boasts one of the most shocking and unexpected twists in any Pixar film ever, with the pivotal reveal that young Miguel's great-great-grandfather is not in fact the legendary departed musician Ernesto de la Cruz. Rather, his real great-great-grandfather is actually the deceased trickster, Hector, who Ernesto fatally poisoned before stealing both his music and his guitar. It's a surprise, but there's a dead visual giveaway early on. That's because the guitar that supposedly belongs to Ernesto has a distinctive gold fleck of colour on the neck, which when turned skyward bears a striking resemblance to the face of Miguel, who in fact has a gold tooth. This was an early indication that something was amiss with Ernesto, and yet easily missed by anyone not paying absolute attention. Number 1. Moongang Eats for Two, Parasite. Bong Joon-ho's Best Picture-winning masterpiece Parasite may be hinged on a major mid-film plot twist, but it's also one which Joon-ho's delicately crafted screenplay expertly builds up to. The big reveal is that the wealthy Park family's housekeeper, Moongang, has hidden her husband in the family's secret basement for the last 4 years in order to protect him from loan sharks. Yet earlier in the film, there is one particular hint towards the fact that Moongang is up to something fishy. After the Parks fire the housekeeper for believing she has tuberculosis, she is described as having only one flaw, that she, quote, always ate enough for two, end quote. While Moongang later claims that she actually paid for all of her husband's food herself, it is nevertheless a blatant verbal insinuation that she is running a scheme beyond herself.